Picture this, a massive oil tanker sailing across the open sea, orbiting satellites keeping a constant watch from space, and lurking in the depths below, a submarine from Russia's fleet. On the opposing side stands the most formidable naval force on the planet, the United States Navy. The pressing issue isn't merely about what could occur. The critical inquiry is this: are we poised at the brink of a fresh worldwide clash? Greetings, everyone. Today, one strategic maneuver has reverberated through diplomatic and military command centers across the globe. Reports indicate Russia has dispatched naval combat vessels, accompanied by a submarine, to guard an oil tanker traversing waters where U.S. authorities had previously sought to take legal action against that same ship. This is far from a standard security detail. This is raw power, international pressure, and global statecraft crashing together in real time. So, what precisely transpired? Based on available information, the tanker had earlier attracted scrutiny from U.S. officials for potential legal and regulatory violations. Yet now, that identical vessel is advancing under the direct armed guardianship of the Russian military. This entails Russian warships patrolling the surface and, crucially, a submarine operating beneath the waves. The communicated stance is unambiguous. Any additional intervention here ceases to be solely a legal matter. It transforms into a deliberate strategic choice. Why does this escalate the situation so significantly? Under ordinary circumstances, commercial shipping relies on Coast Guard services or private security teams for protection. However, the commitment of a submarine represents an entirely different category of action. This kind of deployment is employed when a nation aims to broadcast a definitive statement: we will not be retreating. Security specialists suggest this could constitute a demonstration of strength, a direct counter to international sanctions and pressure, or a deliberate strategic signal aimed squarely at Washington, D.C. In essence, this is not routine maritime safety. This is high-stakes geopolitical communication. No formal war has been declared, no missiles have been launched, yet the military posturing mirrors precisely the kind observed during major international crises. A single error in judgment, one misinterpreted signal, and the entire scenario could pivot from diplomatic friction to a direct naval face-off. Authorities are already labeling this a manifestation of cold conflict on the high seas. Now, envision this potential escalation. U.S. naval forces attempt to intercept or detain the tanker. Russian naval units are already stationed and on high alert. A submarine maneuvers silently in the ocean's depths. At that juncture, the incident would instantly stop being about a single ship. It would become a high-pressure test of the limits two superpowers are prepared to push. What specific message is Russia attempting to convey? This action seems to communicate three distinct points with clarity. First, we will defend our economic and strategic interests with the highest level of commitment. Second, external pressure and restrictive measures will not halt our operational activities. Third, if the situation demands, we are ready to overtly project naval power as a visible deterrent. This is not an official declaration of hostility, but it stands as a potent strategic caution. What potential developments might follow next? The immediate future may not involve open warfare, but rather an intensification of diplomatic pressure, enhanced naval surveillance operations, and discreet negotiations conducted behind closed doors. Because in our interconnected world, one minor mistake can rapidly escalate into a global headline event. This is not a scene from a thriller film. This is real-world geopolitics, where submarines are not merely advanced machines, they are vessels carrying silent, potent messages. The pivotal question is not whether Russia and the United States will enter a shooting war. The pivotal question is, which side will be the first to back down? What is your perspective? Is this merely a display of power politics, or are we observing the initial indicators of a new global standoff? We have seen how one tanker, shielded by Russian warships and a submarine, altered the entire tenor of international relations. Now, let's delve deeper, because the next chapters of this story may not be written on the ocean alone, but within strategic command rooms, through global economic channels, and in confidential diplomatic dialogues. Examining the broader strategic rationale behind the maneuver reveals this is not solely about one vessel. Analysts posit this operation integrates into a wider, established pattern. Russia is signaling its intent to actively safeguard its critical shipping routes. It will directly contest pressures imposed upon its trade networks, and it is prepared to utilize a visible military presence to reinforce its vital economic interests. In contemporary geopolitics, command over energy and transportation corridors is not merely commerce, it is a fundamental expression of power. Why do energy and shipping hold such immense importance? Oil tankers are not just cargo ships, they are mobile, indispensable components of the global economic system. Any disruption to their movement can destabilize supply chains, trigger market volatility and uncertainty, and provoke political reactions that extend far beyond the immediate region. By providing a military-level escort to this tanker, Russia is effectively declaring, "Our trade constitutes a strategic national priority." This transmutes a commercial dispute into a geopolitical confrontation. From the viewpoint of Washington, this scenario presents a complex and delicate calculus. The available options are challenging. Option 1, augment monitoring and ratchet up diplomatic pressure. Option 2, mobilize allied nations and appeal to international institutions. Option 3, steer clear of direct military confrontation while maintaining a persistent strategic presence in the area. What remains evident is this: any overt escalation could drastically increase global tensions. This fundamental risk explains why all actions observed thus far have been measured and every public statement meticulously crafted. This scenario enters a profound danger zone: the risk of misunderstanding and miscalculation. Historical precedents show that major confrontations often originate not from deliberate intent, but from fatal misinterpretation. A defensive maneuver perceived by one side can easily be viewed as a provocation by the other, and when submarines, warships, and intelligence gathering systems operate in close quarters, the margin for operational error shrinks to a perilously narrow degree. This is precisely why military analysts are scrutinizing every movement, not in anticipation of war, but to prevent an accidental incident that no government officially desires. The global reaction from other major powers is one of intense, focused attention. The reason is straightforward. If one nation successfully secures its commercial operations through overt military force, it may incentivize other states to adopt comparable strategies. This could lead to a future with more armed escorts along trade routes, a greater naval presence in contested waters, and a gradual shift toward the militarization of commerce. Not declared conflict, but a world where economic activity increasingly unfolds under a persistent military shadow. What could this signify for the long-term future? This moment may potentially mark a historical turning point. It could herald a future where economic pressure is met with strategic military deployment. Key trade routes could transform into zones of silent, ongoing competition. And diplomatic efforts would need to work with unprecedented vigor to prevent escalation, not from open warfare, but from relentless positioning, signaling, and exercises in calculated restraint. Remember this: history does not always announce its pivotal moments with thunderous explosions. Sometimes it begins with something far quieter: a ship, a military escort, and a message dispatched silently beneath the waves. The tanker continues on its appointed journey. The submarines remain out of sight, and the international community watches closely, anticipating the next strategic move. Because the central question is no longer simply what has happened, but what will happen next. Does this signify the dawn of a new balance of power at sea, or is it merely another episode in the enduring saga of global rivalry? We observed the confrontation taking tangible shape upon the ocean. We uncovered the underlying strategy motivating the move. Now let us examine something with even wider ramifications: how one tanker, one military escort, and one silent submarine could exert influence on the world far beyond any potential battlefield. The ensuing economic shockwaves demonstrate this situation is not merely military, it is profoundly economic. Energy transportation forms the very backbone of international markets. Even a perceived threat to vital shipping lanes can unsettle investor confidence, drive up maritime insurance costs, and seed deep concern regarding the future stability of supplies. Financial markets react not just to current events, but to future expectations, and presently, Those expectations are saturated with uncertainty. When essential energy routes become focal points of political pressure, the impact is felt worldwide. Not necessarily because physical supply has halted, but because the mere possibility of disruption alters behavior. Governments, multinational corporations, and financial institutions all begin pressing urgent questions. Will shipping remain secure? Will costs escalate? Could political tensions fundamentally reshape established trade patterns? This illustrates how a single maritime incident can create ripples affecting fuel prices, global transportation expenses, and long-term economic forecasts. This development is also being monitored with extreme care by global alliances and partnerships. Nations aligned with both sides are meticulously evaluating their own positions. For many countries, the primary question is not determining who is morally or legally right, but rather how to safeguard their own national interests without being drawn into a larger, more dangerous standoff. Behind closed doors, discussions are undoubtedly concentrated on de-escalation protocols, ensuring maritime safety, and preventing a commercial issue from metastasizing into a full-blown political crisis. One of the most significant concerns raised by analysts is the risk of normalization. What occurs if militarily escorted commerce becomes an accepted standard practice? If an increasing number of nations begin protecting their trade with warships and submarines, the world could gradually shift toward a heavier, more constant naval presence in major trade corridors. This would entail intensified strategic competition over crucial shipping lanes and a future where vital economic activity proceeds under continuous military observation. Again, not declared conflict, but a persistent ambient atmosphere of strategic pressure. What we are witnessing is not open confrontation. It is sophisticated strategic positioning. Every movement is calculated, every response is measured, every official statement is carefully worded. This is diplomacy and national power unfolding like a high-stakes global chess match, where the most consequential moves are frequently made in silence, far removed from public scrutiny. The next phase may not generate headlines about armed conflict. Instead, it may involve the drafting of new maritime regulations, adjustments to major trade routes, and strengthened behind-the-scenes diplomatic negotiations. Because both principal sides understand a crucial truth, the cost of a miscalculation in this arena today would resonate far beyond the ocean, affecting the entire international system. History does not always pivot on the outcome of battles. Sometimes it turns on critical decisions made in silence, on ships that continue their voyages uninterrupted, and on signals transmitted beneath the surface of the sea. The world is not watching for war. It is watching for the next signal, because the narrative is no longer just about a tanker. It is about how projections of power, the flow of trade, and grand strategy will collectively mold the future structure of the global order. And the most urgent question now is not who acted first, but how the international community chooses to respond next. We saw the confrontation emerge on the geopolitical radar. We explored the deeper strategy behind it. We examined its wide-ranging economic and diplomatic impact. Now we enter the most sensitive layer of all, the underlying military reality beneath the ocean's surface. Why does naval power continue to decide the game? In our modern era of satellites, cyber capabilities, and advanced technology, one timeless principle remains unchanged. Control of the sea equates to control over global movement, trade, and strategic influence. The world's oceans are not merely expanses of water, they are the planet's essential strategic corridors. The nation that secures them protects not only its ships, but also its fundamental geopolitical leverage. The submarine's presence is itself a profound message. Submarines are not deployed for visibility, they are deployed for deterrence. Their very existence in a theater of operations sends an unambiguous signal, requiring no public announcement. We are watching, we are prepared. Think with extreme care before you act. This is not fundamentally about seeking confrontation. It is about shaping an adversary's decisions long before any confrontation can potentially begin. Military analysts suggest this moment reflects a broader shift in contemporary military doctrine. Instead of reacting after significant pressure is applied, nations are increasingly opting to position their assets first. deploying military resources to key areas before a crisis fully matures. This proactive approach raises the potential cost of any intervention, compels rivals to proceed with greater caution, and transmutes political disputes into complex strategic calculations. The goal is not escalation through force, but the exertion of influence through persistent, undeniable presence. However, with greater military presence comes inherently greater risk. When warships, aircraft, surveillance systems, and submarines operate in close proximity to one another, even routine, non-hostile maneuvers can be dangerously misread. Historical analysis reveals that the triggers of most major crises did not originate with a desire for war, but with catastrophic misunderstanding. This is precisely why modern militaries on all sides now place such heavy emphasis on communication protocols, operational discipline, and tactical restraint, not because conflict is sought, but because it must be assiduously avoided at all costs. What we may be witnessing is the formation of a new maritime reality, an emerging norm. This is a world where strategic waterways are under constant, multi-layered monitoring, where commercial shipping routes carry inherent political weight, and where military assets quietly, yet unmistakably, accompany critical economic activity. This is not the world of past, declared wars. This is the reality of continuous strategic competition without formal declarations. What are military planners truly observing behind the scenes? Defense strategists are not merely tracking ship positions. They are engaged in deep analysis of movement patterns, interpreting signals of intent, and studying how rivals respond to the presence of military power. Because in modern grand strategy, behavioral patterns matter as much as raw firepower. Every deployment poses a silent question. Is this a routine precaution, or is it a deliberate message? Looking ahead, the next stage is unlikely to arrive accompanied by dramatic, alarming headlines. It will unfold incrementally through adjusted naval doctrines, expanded maritime patrol regimes, and deeper coordination among allied nations. The overarching goal on all sides remains identical: to protect vital national interests without ever crossing a line that, once crossed, cannot be retreated from. The oceans may appear calm on the surface. The ships keep moving along their designated routes. The submarines remain unseen in the depths, but beneath that superficial calm lies a silent, ongoing contest of strategy, patience, and projected power. This is not about which side fires the first shot. It is about which side successfully shapes the future without ever needing to fire a shot at all, because in today's intricately connected world, the most decisive battles are not fought with explosions. They are fought through positioning, through presence, and through deliberate, calculated restraint. And so, the final lingering question remains: are we entering an era where true power is measured not by what is overtly used, but by what is strategically and deliberately held back?